Let's jump in. Let's talk about the MVP race because I think that's the one everyone cares about. It seemed pretty clear through the first quarter of the season. Did we do quarter awards? I think, right?
Well, I mean, we might have just in passing, but I'm not sure if we recorded it.
Yeah. So the first quarter was very clearly Giannis, and now James Harden has stepped up and become this unbelievable, all-encompassing force that no one can stop offensively.
Yeah, let's go.
I'll be honest, I still have Giannis at number one on my MVP because I think he has been the most consistent force throughout the course of the entire season so far.
Right.
But what James Harden has done over the last 10 to 15 games seems impossible. It genuinely seems like something that no one could possibly ever do.
He is preposterous.
He is literally doubling and tripling other players in pull-up threes per game. He has more pull-up threes, I think, by himself than any other team in the NBA right now.
Yes. That's factual. That's exactly what's happening.
It's unbelievable the way that he's transforming offense. If he continues along this pace, by the time we do two quarters or 2/3 of the way through the season, those awards, the
7/8 awards.
Yeah, certainly James Harden will be MVP for me then. But based off of the entire body of work of this year, I still do have Giannis there. I will let you just kind of have the floor and tell me what you've got.
I don't want to say that James Harden is the MVP because he has, but you're right on the money with the last 15 games. I mean, he's averaging 38 minutes a game. He has a 116 offensive rating in his last 15 games, which is patently absurd. And he has a usage rating of 40 over the last 15 games. So he's doing this on his own.
Not possible.
It's happening. This is happening. Those are the actual stats. Yeah. And given what that has meant to the Rockets, we can get into the semantical argument over the most valuable player award and what that means. But the Rockets have gone from 13th place up into the conversation for the number one seed in the Western Conference over this span. It has been Harden and mostly just Harden. Again, usage rate of 40%. I don't like the notion of giving the MVP to a guy who has a defensive rating of 111 on the season, but and certainly Giannis is infinitely deserving. But if we're saying halfway through the season right now, we're drawing a line in the sand, and it's who the MVP is today. If the season were to end today, I think I would have to do James Harden, if nothing else, for recency bias. Now, if we're saying who's going to be the MVP at the end of the season, I'm with you on Giannis, because not only has he been most consistent to this point, that will lend itself, I presume, to the second half of the year. Whereas James Harden, I know he can sustain it to a certain degree, but I don't know when the tired's going to hit, because I don't think he's ever been on a stretch like this before when it comes to just straight usage. And I mean, the entire Rockets offense for 2 straight years was just James Harden. So I don't like the notion of giving it to a guy who only plays on one end of the court and has a 2.3 net rating, whereas Giannis has an 11.3. But what it's meant to the Rockets, and ultimately, Milwaukee has a lot of other good players, and we're going to mention a few other factors for their tremendous success here in the next couple. Houston is James Harden and only James Harden. That's a team that I would argue is worse than it was last year, and he has put them right back into the same stratosphere. You got to respect that.
So I understand that. And really, I think that he only needs to get to the end of January, because that's when Chris Paul's expected to get back from the hamstring injury. So if he can get them through the end of this, they can get Chris Paul back, and they can finally kind of take, or James Harden at least can take the gas off the pedal, just
a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't take it off too much, though. It's not like they were very good when Chris Paul was around.
Right. Obviously. But with Giannis, you bring up the supporting cast argument.
Yeah. I don't think it's a fair argument, but man, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid here. I mean, I think that it's 51-49 right now in my book, and Giannis gets a little bit of help to a certain degree. I think mostly from coaching. He's doing a lot of the same stuff he was doing last year.
What are we going to say that Mike D'Antoni is like a bad offensive coach though for what James Harden is doing?
No, but again,
crazy.
40 it's 10% higher usage. I mean,
it is. It's really unbelievable.
It's extremely noted. Now, maybe you say that 10% usage is offset by the fact that Giannis can play defense and has an 11.3 net rating on the back of a 100.8 defensive rating. Like, that argument is salient to me. Like, okay, those cancel each other out or whatever degree. But and that's why I said it's probably recency bias, in which I feel it's Harden, and mostly this jump up from the Rockets, who narrative-wise are much more part of the day-to-day NBA narrative. And frankly, the narrative has changed dramatically as Harden has done this. So I'm going to be a sucker for the narrative to a certain degree.
So you bring up the idea of supporting cast, though. And that's what I want to go to. Like, Chris Middleton is better than anyone else that James Harden has been doing this run with Houston, right?
Yes.
But like after that, it gets like pretty close, right? Like
I don't necessarily agree, because Milwaukee has a much better system. They're much more defensively sound. Like,
they have a much better. Do you really think they have a much better offensive system than Houston?
Aesthetically, yes. On the practicality sense, probably not. But
yeah, I just
listen. We're gonna talk. I'll just tell you right now. Bud's my coach of the year, and I don't even think it's close.
I agree with that.
I have to take that. I have to take that into account when we're doing this, where it's like, okay, how much of Giannis's jump up from where he was last year, which was preposterous numbers in and of itself, has to do with the rising tide lifting all ships. And I honestly can't tell you that Giannis has taken it to another level, unlike the rest of his teammates. Whereas, again, this is just a narrative thing. The Rockets clearly suck comparatively to last year. They are not as good of a team as they were last year. I mean, they're playing Austin Rivers, and we're playing Michael Carter Williams for stretches. All this stuff. And they sucked. And we were, I mean, writing off was probably too aggressive, but man, we were like, I don't think the Rockets are ever getting back to that point. I don't think the window had closed, right? And guess what? Looks like the window's open again.
60, right? Like, no one thought they were going to win 60 again, or even like 55 after the early.
If you were having a conversation about who the Warriors' number one contender in the Western Conference was at the beginning of the season, it was the Houston Rockets, and at the quarter mark of the season, it was definitely not the Houston Rockets. And at the halfway point, you could argue it might be the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point.
There's something to be said for that. Whereas the Bucks, we expected them to be good. They're probably a little bit better than we thought. Giannis is a little bit better than he was last year, which means that he has gone from deity to full-on God. I don't know. I want to give it to Giannis. I really do. You give me another 10 days, I'm giving it to Giannis, because I don't think James Harden's going to keep on this thing. But the last 15 games from Harden are too much for me to ignore, and all of the narrative stuff, I'm getting swept up in it. I am. I think his game is almost unwatchable. I hate sort of the broken down roteness of it all. I think it's anti-sporting. I will go on and on about James Harden's style and this, hyper ISO, get to the foul line 30 times a game nonsense that I think is bad for basketball. Everyone talks about the Warriors ruining the game. I get that. You know what ruins the game? A bunch of kids watching James Harden, throw his arms out looking to get someone to come across his forearms and go to the line. Like, that's bad influence in my opinion. But
so James Harden
doesn't mean it isn't working. It's fucking working.
James Harden's last 14 games, 40.3 points, 7.1 rebounds, 9.4 assists.
Yeah.
40% from three on, wait for it, 15 three-point attempts per game. Yeah, 88% from the line on 13 attempts a game. Just
and I
insane.
If I bet you go in on that, like, his wide open shot ratio is like 2%.
Yeah, like
all of them with two dudes on his jock, and he's still doing it. So if we're looking for sort of the Ullman's load, right? We want to make this to be like one man, triumphed over all and won it. I think you have to go with James Harden, who is putting the team on his back right now.
Sure. I think that's totally reasonable. I've gone with
Again, give me another 15 games and I'm out.
Yeah. Give me Giannis. He's averaging 27 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists a game. He's everything for the Milwaukee Bucks in terms of creating offense right now. Cause Chris Middleton's had a solid year. I wouldn't necessarily call it like an outlier great year from him so far. Right. at least in terms of the leap that I was hoping and anticipating that he would take.
Right.
He's mostly been the same guy, maybe shooting like slightly worse all over the floor. But a lot of their scheme stuff has mostly affected the other guys. Like Eric Bledsoe has been able to be a lot more effective. Tony Snell has been a lot more effective. Brook Lopez is obviously having like a renaissance year because they've just let him loose from three. Like there's a lot of system stuff that I think affects the other guys, but the system can't work without Giannis. And I think it's worth rewarding the best team in the NBA base. I think they're the best team in the NBA right now in terms of record, right? I think they're 29-11. No one else has 11 losses. Toronto's 31-12. So like maybe you can say they have 2 more wins, 1 less loss, 6 of one, half dozen of the other in terms of winning percentage. It's Milwaukee right now. But for me, like I'm okay with rewarding the team that has been the best throughout the course of the regular season so far. They're on a 60-game winning track. They're on pace to win 60, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And I think Giannis is the reason for that. He's better, like considerably better defensively than James Harden. The production is not all that different. Offensively, it's certainly different, just in terms of what Harden can bring to the table as a scorer and as a pull-up shooter and as a distributor for others. Giannis is not a slouch as a distributor for others. I think is definitely something that is worth saying.
Wait a minute, people think that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, okay. That's why you thought it was worth saying.
No, yeah, like he's a really, really good distributor. Like I want to make sure that is said. He's also an incredible defender. His length just covers up so many holes within their scheme. They play kind of soft coverage and pick and roll. He's able to kind of rotate over from the wing and really just kind of shut stuff down from the weak side pretty regularly. Creates a lot of transition opportunities due to his length. It has turned into a smarter defender.
Me. He's a goddamn beast. I mean,
no, I know. I just want to make sure that like we take time and
honor the greatness. I think we're going to have a lot of time to do it because the rest of the season will most likely be a coordination.